the Chief Strategy Officer of EMC. Mark comes from a lot of experience, 10 years in EMC, as well as before lots of storage experience from companies such as HP, Compaq, and DEC. And I really look forward to see what Mark is going to tell us about what EMC is doing in cloud computing. I know EMC, VMware is a cloud service provider themselves via Mozy for backup as a service, as well as a cloud enabler. And recently I heard something that the CEO said that he believes that the cloud computing wave is the largest wave of IT industry transformation in history. So I'm sure that EMC has a big focus on cloud computing. So Mark?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I think Avner did a great job of teeing up kind of the overall market and the situation. I'll spend a few minutes kind of diving into our thoughts and strategy. This is our marketing slogan: is cloud meets big data. So we kind of have both buzzwords covered, I think, which can be a part of the challenge. I think these days is that there's, if you look at classic IT. We've kind of renamed it a little bit these days, and we consider it an industry in transition. And there's just so much going on, but we don't really understand kind of the depth of it. I pulled together a chart over the last 10 years looking at the market caps of top technology companies. So the size of the bubble is basically over the years how the market capitalization of the company has grown or shrank. What's some interesting things is half of the largest 25 technology companies effectively didn't exist 10 years ago. So you talk about an industry in transition. If you get in any other industry other than technology, this is just stuff you don't see. It is amazing to see the sea change, companies that kind of stagnate or kind of go sideways, companies that appear. You can see companies up there that are going the other way and disappearing. So this is a very dynamic industry, and one we should be very aware of all of the things going on. Why I think it's so dynamic now is that we're not really experiencing just one wave, we're experiencing several waves all happening at the same time. We're clearly seeing this new social wave of connectedness coming across the entire environment, which is cloud related, but it's still a different phenomenon of social connectivity. And the same thing with smartphones and mobile. The mobile era is changing how we view devices and how we may view applications. It is cloud connected, but it is its own revolution as well. Cloud, obviously, we see the change in dynamics of cloud, which I'll spend more time. And finally, big data, which I think is more than just big data itself and more than the words describe, and I'll talk to you about what that is. So we've seen IT go through these different waves, and with each wave has been fundamental change and fundamental differences. With cloud, I believe there were three technology drivers that drove it. And it's important to understand kind of why did cloud occur? And to be honest, why did grids and things not occur? And I think the foundational areas of the idea of utility computing was always good, but until we had the technology right in terms of architecture and what we were going to do, it was never going to really work out. One of the first thing that happened was both with the performance and ubiquity of x86 processing. You see 2,000% performance increase since 2005, and you see effectively x86 architectures, dominating the compute environment today. You created a ubiquity of computing, capability that became very, very low cost, very ubiquitous, but something you wanted to harness in a more efficient way. So along with that came virtualization. So virtualization took that consistency and created what was effectively the super low cost mainframe. So you were able to put applications together, and you were able to do that in a very, very inexpensive way. And virtualization has been one of the most, profoundly, I believe, cost-saving things that has ever happened in IT, and really virtualization itself causing this wave. And as you see, we now run more virtual machines than we do physical machines. So the wave, the tipping point has happened. This is clearly a trend. Unfortunately for us in storage, one of the problems is that it's been very hard for us to keep up with performance. Partially because hard disk drives, you still had the fundamentals of mechanics and physics to deal with, so we still had millisecond type latencies in disk I/O systems. Virtualization exacerbated this problem, the processing capabilities exacerbated this problem, which is why you now see flash technology evolving into that space that is really going to help transform the storage space as well to basically catch up on that performance curve. And those three together really for us create the cloud computing that starts to transform IT. Now the first step for most has been to move to private clouds. And private clouds are depending on how you want to argue what they are, but effectively individuals using virtualization and management software to create their own clouds within their data centers is a sea change, with well over 30% of customers doing it, probably up to about 50% of our customers anyway doing large amounts of that today. And you see it going through in three areas. First, starting with IT production, where you're simply seeking out simplicity and efficiency in your core own IT environments. And that's largely happened. So the virtualization of those core IT environments has largely happened already. Now you're seeing the more and more business production of your business scalable apps, where those apps require the continuity and security and all of those elements, but virtualization is making them more efficient, and it's really starting to come to the mainstream apps. And ultimately, obviously, the evolution to more of an IT as a service, where you really provide the automation and standardization. And I believe we're just really entering that category of IT as a service today. SaaS clearly is what I call the other cloud disruptor, and I view them as very differently. SaaS is purchased by application owners and business owners, and clouds or IT as a service is purchased by infrastructure and IT individuals. What you see happening with SaaS environments is that there's a whole stream of applications, and yes, largely most of the ERP and classic IT applications still exist within the data center. But you're seeing more and more of those applications as they can be brought out, created with more ubiquity and more transparency, like HR conferencing, web conferencing, where SaaS is starting to dominate. But the key thing is there is clearly this motion. This motion is going to continue, but it's very application driven. Some applications very much lend themselves to multi-tenancy and common tools, like web conferencing. No reason any individual IT shop is going to develop their own web conferencing application. But when you get over into analytics and ERP, these can be core business areas that are going to probably remain classic IT for some time. So we don't see that changing much. So what you wind up with is if you look at the real infrastructure, and this is public cloud revenue, you see obviously most of the public cloud revenue really being driven by SaaS products today. Very small amount of platform as a service. There's differing trends on how that evolves. I think it will have importance, but I doubt personally that it will have a lot of independent traction. As I talk to CIOs today, what they tell me is we tend to like to use and buy SaaS products and then look at how we extend those products into other use cases. So for example, Force.com principally exists to support small application add-ons to Salesforce.com. There's very few companies looking at Force.com seriously or other PaaS services as a platform for writing lots and lots of applications. We see it as adjuncts to other core applications and using those platforms for extensions. But again, we don't know how that'll exactly evolve. But again, with the SaaS environment, it's going to be a very robust and changing environment there. Ultimately, we see the evolution to hybrid clouds, which is obviously being able to mix public and private infrastructures together, getting a little bit of the best of both worlds of having your classic infrastructure, but being able to have upside and independent capability across those environments. As Abner noted, there's a few things we do well to do it today, and there's some things we don't do as well. I think we do server and storage virtualization pretty well, and we're pretty good at optimizing the infrastructure. And we have a lot of data management capabilities in EMC, and those are really, out there in developing markets. Network virtualization is a big gap. And as we said, this bandwidth on demand, but truly virtualizing the networks and domains and whatnot is something that is a very much up-and-coming technology and very much needed. We were talking today about, having automated cars and wireless in all your devices and whatnot. And right now, the bandwidth providers still have us captive to, every device we buy, we have to buy some kind of unlimited data plan. And really, as soon as we can decouple that from the device itself and start looking at how we use things, imagine, we can have a cell phone or connectivity to the wireless and everything. My refrigerator could have a wireless connection to tell me, when it's low on food. But the reason we wouldn't do that today is because you'd have to pay the $50 a month wireless plan for that. So as that evolves, we see network virtualization really changing that. Security and management orchestration are other big areas that I think will evolve here and really do need to evolve, because for the enterprise consumer, those are the key things. How do I manage this as one? I still want this to look like my IT, even though I may be getting services from 10 or 20 different SaaS providers. We build that up, and we see a transformation continuing in applications. More development platforms, more new technologies. We acquired Spring Source within VMware, but there's Ruby, there's Python, one of my favorite new technologies called Node.js. So I think there's going to be a lot of platforms, a lot of databases, a lot of things. So I think the idea of settling on, there was Java and .NET kind of environments, I think that day is over. I think you're going to be able to pick and choose across tons of open source communities, tons of development environments, and I see those things rolling over and changing constantly. And then the final area really being that ubiquity of end-user computing, where it's really getting tougher now at the end-user side. So the server side's getting easier, end-user side's getting a little bit tougher these days because of all the devices and form factors and shapes. So see a lot of technology evolving there. So ultimately, this evolving to the new layering of IT with infrastructure as a service, cloud capabilities layered onto a next generation set of application platforms, predominantly connected by web services, delivering out to a new generation of end-user computing, focused again on the sides with strong security throughout, strong levels of automation across that. Now that cloud transforms IT. What we really see is big data also transforming business, and is another key theme. And we talk a lot about that the digital size universe is going to grow a lot, essentially 44 times in the next decade to 35.2 zettabytes. So that's how many zeros it is, 10 to the 21st power, in case anybody cares. It's gotten too big to account for. And that's from all these data sources expanding. Now, one of the key things to remember now is that all of this information coming in is fundamentally not structured. It's not sitting in rows and columns. It's not sitting in data warehouses. So it is big data. But if that's all it was, that's kind of saying, okay, well, I got a video. Ooh, I'm in big data. And I don't think that's really what it's about. So big data is different. I believe it will be transformational, but it is complex. And so I call it real-time intelligence from the correlation and analysis of transaction and interaction data. That, to me, is kind of the register for big data. You will have scale. You will have scope, meaning both structured and unstructured and semi-structured data, emails, videos, Twitter feeds, along with relational data, all coming together. You will add velocity, and this is a big thing in the evolution of business intelligence, if you will. We are used to providing reports and generating reports and effectively using data warehousing as a batch process. In today's society, it's all about real-time generation of the analytics and the insight. So that will move to a real-time view. And it will be about complexity, or analytics, if you will. It'll be about taking the analytics and putting these pieces together in a much more effective way. And that really is what makes big data different. It is not just having video files or having lots of stuff. It's trying to get value out of that stuff, trying to get insight and intelligence from that information. It means we'll change a lot of our storage architectures from scale-up manually configured systems to scale-out automated systems. And the growth, the pooling of storage is going to be very, very scale-out focused for low administrative costs and linear performance to that scalability. And so the idea and the concept of big data is tackling problems like this, looking at the impact of climate change. And in providing, these are systems that are starting to look at data sets that are disparate, some are public, some are private, putting all that data together and then trying to connect all of the dots. I believe this is where we'll see breakthroughs in intelligence here, in climate change, in healthcare, personalized medicine. This all becomes a revolution for big data that I think really can transform, how business is accomplished. So when you think of big data, don't just think of, large files, but think of the value and intelligence that can come from putting all those pieces together. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.